Welcome. My name is Eric Willett. I'm a Senior Product Marketing Manager here at Microsoft, responsible for data loss prevention. Today I have the pleasure and honor to have Maz Libman, Principal Program Manager, who is responsible for data loss prevention products in the Microsoft Information Protection team, joining me with this session. Hi, Maz.
Hey, Eric. Good to be with you today.
Excellent. Yeah, it's always a pleasure. So today we will talk about information risk keeping you up at night. Let's deploy some intelligent information protection and data loss prevention to help you sleep better. So in this session, we'll cover the Microsoft Unified DLP solution, the new additions to Microsoft DLP here at Ignite, and how Microsoft DLP works in the context of a broader security and compliance offering. So let's get started. So here we see the highlight of a couple of the key areas that Microsoft focuses on for DLP. Microsoft's DLP solution provides a broad range of capabilities to address the modern workplace and the unique challenges represented by these very different scenarios. One of the key investment areas is in providing a unified and comprehensive solution across many different kinds of environments and services where sensitive data is stored, used, or shared. This includes platforms native to Microsoft and also non-Microsoft services and apps. The second critical area of investment is to ensure that our Microsoft DLP solution remains consistently easy to deploy and manage across the many different workloads. For their administrators, organizations want to streamline the experience from the time they identify sensitive data and apply sensitivity labels to setting up policies that govern the use of sensitive data. For their information workers, they want a seamless and integrated experience that is intuitive, guided, and not disruptive in the completion of their day-to-day tasks. Equally important, our customers have a strong desire to consolidate the number of individual solutions they use to manage their data and security to prevent data loss. Microsoft's DLP is uniquely positioned to meet and exceed these requirements. Over the past several years, Microsoft has invested significantly to provide a comprehensive set of DLP offerings that address the needs of modern organizations. Native DLP integration has grown to span the staples of information worker platforms in Exchange, Outlook, Office, SharePoint Online, OneDrive for Business, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and Teams. And more recently, with the native experiences in Endpoint DLP and Edge Chromium browsers, and also via Microsoft Cloud App Security to protect sensitive content going to and from third-party apps and services hosted on other platforms. This approach ensures that information workers are alerted of DLP policies directly within the environments they used every day and in context, meaning that when a policy is triggered, the user is made aware directly from the environment at the time the event occurs. So they are in the moment and are familiar with the actions that cause the event, which helps them understand what happened, why it happened, and how they can remediate or address the incident. Over the past several months, we've added many new capabilities to our existing solution, including adding Microsoft Information Protection sensitivity labels in support of DLP policies, advanced controls in DLP for email protection, improved support for even the most complex of policies for very large organizations, security group and distribution lists for Teams DLP policies, alerts to manage and group DLP events as a single entity, and new classifiers and content types. We have more information on these and many other additions and improvements within our blog links provided at the end of the presentation. And Maz, this brings us to our latest additions to the ever-growing capabilities for the Microsoft DLP family.
That's right. We've got 3 new capabilities we're really excited to talk about today. First, of course, we have integrating our endpoint DLP capabilities into Chrome via our new Chrome plugin, extending our data loss prevention to on-premises file repositories, and a bunch of new enhancements that we've made to our DLP alert management experiences to ensure that you're able to investigate those incidents and remediate them accordingly.
Wow, very cool. Okay, so let's take a closer look here. First on our list is Chrome Browser DLP and Insider Risk Management Extension, which you'll see in the Chrome store very shortly. Many organizations use Chrome to support their sensitive workloads, and we're pleased to announce the public preview of our Chrome extension. With this addition to their Chrome browsers, customers now have native DLP and Insider Risk Management integration for their onboarded endpoint devices. So with this, they can add Chrome as an approved application in DLP for working with sensitive information. They can create custom DLP policies in Chrome to ensure sensitive data is properly handled and protected from accidental or inappropriate disclosures, including an audit mode that records policy violation events without impacting user productivity, block with override mode that records and blocks activity but allows a user to override when they have a legitimate business need, and then block mode that records and blocks the activity without the ability to override. We also deliver new insights related to the obfuscation, exfiltration, and infiltration of sensitive information by insiders with our insider risk management component. As with other Microsoft DLP and insider risk management capabilities, it was critical to provide the Microsoft Data Risk Management Chrome extension the same familiar look and feel that users already are accustomed to from their applications and services that they use every day. This reduces the end user training time and alert confusion. It also increases the user confidence in prescribed guidance and remediations. And it improves the overall policy compliance without reducing productivity. So users are automatically alerted when they take an inappropriate action or risky action with sensitive data and are provided with actionable policy tips and guidance to remediate properly. So Maz, could you show us how this works?
Sure, Eric. Let's go ahead and jump in and show you how this looks. Here I've opened the Microsoft 365 Compliance Center, which is your organization's one-stop shop for all your various different information protection and data governance controls. Here I have the data loss prevention homepage open, where I can see all the policies my organization's already deployed and configured to protect sensitive information. Now, before we dig in to show you how those work, we'll dive on over to the browser and domain restrictions to show you how this is coupled with our protection that's built into the Microsoft Edge Chromium browser, as well as the recently announced Chrome plugin to help you protect your sensitive data. Now, since we recently announced this Chrome plugin, of course, you don't need to worry about allowing Chrome to access your sensitive data. However, through these controls, you can specify those other applications and browsers that aren't permitted to access your sensitive data so that you can assure it's shared with the appropriate places. And that's coupled with the service domain protection. In this case, my organization has configured this to allow sensitive data to be uploaded only to the service domains that I've listed here, box.com in this example. And any other service domains will be restricted from sharing that sensitive information. Now I'm switching back over to the policies page, where I can show you how I've configured a policy to detect sensitive information and help protect it from being used on an endpoint device. Here we can see this policy is already configured to protect sensitive data across a wide range of places, from email that's sent from these people in my organization, content that's shared and uploaded from SharePoint or OneDrive, of course, as well as endpoint devices that we'll focus on today. And I could just as easily extend this to additional places, such as Teams chat messages, third-party clouds, such as Salesforce, as well as on-premises file shares and file repositories. Now here we're going to switch on over and show you how this rule is configured to detect and protect your sensitive information. In this case, it's configured with my custom classifier that my organization has built to find specific terms and data that relates to our confidential projects. So as data is created and shared and used, it's automatically scanned and analyzed to determine if it's subject to some of our information protection controls related to confidential projects. We've also included Project Falcon, the sensitivity label, as a detection criteria. So if I see a document that's already been labeled with one of our sensitivity labels relating to one of those confidential projects, I will automatically apply these additional restrictions to that content when it's detected across any of the different places that I've configured in this policy. Now we'll scroll on down to the list of restrictions that I've configured on my endpoint devices. Now there's a wide range of different types of activities that you can restrict to help ensure that sensitive data is only used in the most appropriate way. And you get a wide range of controls, whether you want to block that activity, monitor it in the background, generate alerts if you see something suspicious, or if you want to block but give the user an override option so that they may be restricted, but they'll have an option to enter a business justification and bypass that control in real time so that they can remain productive for valid business needs. Now, of course, for the Chrome plugin, this is coupled with our upload to cloud service domains restriction, where you can see that this is configured to restrict or block users from sharing sensitive data if it matches any of those criteria that I showed earlier. There's no option to override because the only sanctioned place for this organization is the service domains that I listed earlier. I've also configured this rule to keep my data officers informed when they see suspicious activity relating to any of the sensitive data that's detected in this rule. Now, I could notify them right away the time any type of activity occurs. However, what I'm looking for here is something a little bit more subtle. For example, a user performing 3 suspicious activities in the last hour. And if I see that detection for this type of data, I'm going to generate an alert that's going to notify my admins so that they can go and investigate it and go track and make sure that this data was being used appropriately. We'll show you a little bit more about that a little bit later on today. Now, since I've already deployed this policy, we're going to go ahead and switch on over and show you how that looks on our endpoint devices. Here I'm logged into an endpoint device that's already enrolled and subject to the policy controls we just saw a moment earlier. And I have a file, in this case, Project Obsidian, a PDF document that contains sensitive information that our endpoint DLP solution has analyzed and determined it contains data that is subject to the DLP policy controls that we just configured. That means I'm allowed to access it and use it in ways that do not violate that policy. But for example, if I try to print this document, which was a restricted activity, I'll see this built-in notification right from our data loss prevention solution that tells the user, hey, you're trying to perform something that's risky and it's not allowed via policy. Of course, since this activity was block override, the user has an option to provide either a built-in business justification or to type in a specific reason and bypass this control in real time so that they can continue to be productive if they're doing a valid activity for this type of data. Now, as we showed earlier, we also have configured this organization to allow sensitive data to be uploaded to places like Box. However, any other service domain is restricted from accessing that sensitive data. So if I try to upload this document to a sanctioned place, go ahead and select that Project Obsidian file, no problem, no restrictions, nothing interferes with the user performing a valid activity. However, if I switch on over to Dropbox, which just so happens to be not in that list of allowed service domains, and I try to upload that exact same file, we'll actually see that our DLP solution and that DLP Chrome plugin has helped detect that that information is subject to a policy control and blocked the user from sharing that document. Now, in this case, there's only a dismiss control. There was no override that was enabled in that policy, which means the users are not allowed to share this data in this way. And of course, behind the scenes, all that rich audit telemetry continues to flow to the surface, so you get full visibility to understand how and where the sensitive information is being used and generate those necessary alerts if that's required. And so that's a quick look at how our new Chrome plugin works with Endpoint DLP. Handing back to you, Eric, to talk about some of our on-premise investments.
Thank you, Maz. Next on our list is on-premise DLP. This new capability provides visibility and DLP policy enforcement for on-premise data. So let's take a closer look. Speaking with customers, we know that organizations have transitioned to the cloud for many of their operations. However, they do tell us that even with this transition well underway, they continue to have significant presence of data with their on-premise environments. One of the big challenges that they face is that much of their data on-premise is dark, meaning that it isn't classified, it is not protected, and it is not governed, which makes it very difficult for them to assess what it is, how it should be protected, and where it should go. This lack of visibility is impacting their ability to pursue this migration of data to the cloud because they can't take the regulatory risk of moving what just might be sensitive data in an inappropriate way. Even with the best of intentions, they do not have actionable plans to migrate this data or the data that's being added into their on-premise environment as part of their normal business operations every day. And as a result, they believe that they will continue to keep data on-premise for even 5 years from now. Microsoft's on-premise DLP was developed specifically to assist customers to gain the visibility that they need for their on-premise data and build a comprehensive and actionable data security and compliance framework to help them better manage and protect their sensitive data. So let's take a closer look. Microsoft's on-premise DLP solution was designed with key customer outcomes in mind. Specifically, provide a scalable and integrated capability that leverages DLP and Microsoft information protection policies to discover sensitive data and identify unknown and overexposed repositories. Also, to provide automated means to label sensitive data while using Microsoft information protection. So, for example, secret, GDPR, HIPAA as tags, so that users are aware of the proper handling procedures for sensitive data. Also, provide an automated means to change access permissions to on-premises file stores, properly reflecting the appropriate access controls. And also provide automated means to move data from an unapproved on-premise location to another approved on-premise location that provides markers also to users so they can understand the changes that occurred, and then they can request access to the new location if they have a business need. And then lastly, provide clear visibility for the organization to decide what data can be migrated to the cloud, and also assign labels so that the cloud services can enforce the appropriate data protection required to meet all regulatory obligations. So Maz, could you give us a little bit of a look at the architecture and how customer environments would deploy this on-premise DLP solution?
Absolutely, Eric. Sure, let's go ahead and look a bit at how that works. Of course, it starts with the M365 Compliance Center, which continues to be your one-stop shop where you configure and manage all of your data classifications, your sensitivity labels, and all of your data loss prevention policies as you configure and manage sensitive information across your organization. But that policy is now extending to the Azure Information Protection Services so that you're able to now take those same DLP policies that you've been enforcing against Exchange and SharePoint and Teams and now extend that to your on-prem file repositories. If you're familiar with the AIP scanner, it's already a service that we have available for you to start to discover and classify that data. And what we've done is we've extended that service so that it's able to consume our data loss prevention policies. So on the same jobs that you've configured that are running and performing those scanning across those assets, it's now taught a new trick so that it's able to detect where that sensitive information is, extend the data classification insights that you get about the files that are stored in those repositories, and start to take remediation actions, such as to reduce or limit the exposure of that data to ensure that it's secured properly in your on-premises file repositories.
Thank you, Maz. That's great. So now you can discover, you can label, and you can remediate this information. So could you give us a little bit of a demo for this on-premise DLP?
Absolutely. Let's jump on in and show how this looks to get set up. So here I've opened up the M365 Compliance Center, and I've navigated right to the data loss prevention homepage, which I showed you earlier when we were looking at the Chrome plugin, which is my one-stop shop where I can manage and configure all of the data loss prevention policies across my organization. Now, earlier that policy was configured to protect sensitive data in my cloud services in Exchange and SharePoint, Teams, and of course, endpoint devices. I'm going to show you how easy it is to extend that same policy to those on-premises file repositories that we just talked about. So I'm going to go ahead and edit my Protect Tented Projects policy that I configured to detect sensitive data such as the Project Obsidian document that we were looking at earlier. And here on the locations page, we can see all the places where this policy is currently configured to protect sensitive data. We've already configured Exchange, SharePoint, OneDrive, and your endpoint devices. And I'm going to go ahead and now extend this to my on-premises file repositories. Now, this is super easy to set up because by default, you can automatically scan all the places that you've already configured your AIP scanners to scan for sensitive data. So if you want a broad policy that's going to go look for sensitive data in every one of those locations, super easy for you to, of course, do that. But if you have granular needs, if you have a specific set of sites, IP address ranges, whatever it may be, you have that flexibility within the policy control to really pinpoint the specific places within your organization and those specific file shares that have the type of data that's going to be subject to this policy so that you can ensure you put the right controls in the right place. Now, I'm going to go ahead and leave this policy applied broadly so that all those places that the scanner is configured to protect will extend with this new type of DLP policy protection that we're talking about. Now, once I've selected the locations for this policy, the next step is to pick, well, what are the circumstances when this policy is going to detect and protect that sensitive data? So I'm going to go ahead and click this open and edit this policy so we can show you the criteria that is used to generate this match. You can see that this is already configured with those custom sensitive information type to look for confidential projects. So any of my documents that happen to have terms related to some of the confidential projects that my organization is working on will automatically get detected and protected. Or if it's already been assigned a sensitivity label, I can use that sensitivity label as an indicator to now extend my policy protection to that type of data. Now, as we showed earlier, this policy is already configured to protect my Windows devices and enforce restrictions such as upload to cloud. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on an additional restriction that's specific to those on-premises file repositories. And what I get is a specific set of actions. So each different types of workloads, they have different kinds of things that you can do to the data. So in this case, for an on-premises file repository, I've got a couple of different options that I can pick here. Now, first, I can just put the shields up, block everybody. I found sensitive data in a place it shouldn't be there. I need to put the shields up, so to speak. So you have a very broad control where you can just enable that protection and ensure that the access to it has now been restricted until you're able to go and correct the location of that data. But of course, quite often what we see is the data might be in the right place. It's been used properly, but perhaps it's overexposed. It's been ACLed to the wrong set of users. And so this is where you get additional controls to block only the people that have certain characteristics. For example, you can inherit the permissions from the parent folder. Or you could move the file to a completely different location, which you know is already set up with the appropriate set of permissions that you want, or into a quarantine folder so that you can go and take a look at the content and ensure that it's used correctly. And again, you get the flexible controls here to choose, well, what kind of sensitive data is this policy going to apply to, the locations where that sensitive data is going to be detected, and then what type of remediation action. Do you want to just audit it, monitor it, perhaps generate an alert to tell your administrative staff something's out there, or do you want to take an automated corrective action? All these controls are available for you right through the data loss prevention policy controls. Now, once I've chosen the access restrictions, super easy for me to extend this policy. I literally just go ahead and save the settings here. I'm going to go ahead and choose the configuration that we want and deploy this. Now, automatically, the Azure Information Protection Services is picking up this change. And as my Azure Information Protection Scanner runs based upon either my manual schedule or perhaps through my built-in schedule that I've already set up, these DLP policy controls are going to start to detect that data and start to give you that visibility so that you understand how and where is your sensitive data being used. And of course, that feeds into things like visibility in the Activity Explorer, generating alerts so that you keep your data staff informed, and a variety of different actions. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over back to Eric. We can talk a bit about some of the new things we have coming in our alert management space.
Thanks, Moz. So yes, let's take a closer look here. So after our last Ignite conference, we introduced the ability to group DLP events as a single alert to be managed together as a single incident. So this streamlined the work required to review and address DLP policy violations. So today we're announcing a dedicated area within your DLP management portal with advanced capabilities, including the complete event visibility with content preview. And also our big addition is the ability to view matched sensitive content with context, which means that you now have the ability to understand the actual data that triggered the policy. And Moz will show that as part of our demo. The other capabilities include user attributes like manager, department, and so forth, rich filters, and even better exports in terms of capabilities. So some of the DLP alerts can contain very sensitive or privileged information, and so the alert management view also provides a protected or restricted viewing capability so that only approved roles have access to this data. So folks like compliance administrators, compliance data administrators, security administrators, security operators, and also the security reader views within your environment. The DLP alert management capability supports advanced workflows to review, to assign and manage DLP alerts with actions and also status information, including an active, investigating, resolved, or dismissed flag, so you know what is happening with these alerts directly. So Moz, could you show us a little bit more detail about the alert environment?
Absolutely, Eric. So let's go ahead and jump back to the M365 Compliance Center. Here I am. I'm back in the data loss prevention homepage. However, instead of the policy section, now I've zoomed into the alerts section. What this shows me is all of the different alerts and telemetry that's coming in from my policies that I've configured to tell me, hey, we saw something suspicious. The user was sharing data in a way that we don't think that they should have. So now your administrative staff, your data officers now have visibility and have one place where they can go and easily find where those detections are happening. And of course, drill in, understand what was the detection and understand the next steps that are required. So here we can see one example match where we have consolidated. The alert view is giving us a view that shows this user has been subject to a couple of repeat events. So we've seen that there's something suspicious going on with this user. They seem to be sharing some sensitive data relating to some tented projects, that policy that I configured earlier and showed you. So now all in one place, through the data that the alert is providing me, I can really start to understand, well, what was the user doing with the data? Were they doing something suspicious? Was this part of some standard business process? Do I need to fine tune my policy? Or was this potentially the wrong operation? I need to go now have my data officers go and investigate and find out why precisely this user was sharing this information in this way. Another, as I showed you earlier, of course, the policies that we have deployed are protecting data across all the different places where you have sensitive data: Exchange, SharePoint, OneDrive, Teams, endpoint devices, on-premises file shares, third-party clouds, so on and so forth. And so there's a large volume of alerts that you can get, and all of those are going to come in right here. And here I have another example of an event that's been generated from an email transaction. That same user has now been forwarding some sensitive information. And again, I can zoom in, I can really understand what was this user performing with this activity within this alert experience. And I can even pick the specific events. And as Eric mentioned earlier, we've just recently launched the ability for you to see the actual context data that generated the match. What was the actual sensitive data in this message when the user sent it that generated the match? So now right within the alert investigation experience, of course, if you have the right permissions to view this kind of data, you can now really understand what was the user doing with this event. Were they doing the right thing, or does it require additional investigation? And there's a wealth of information that we provide here, from the actual content that generated the match to a variety of different attributes about the sensitive data. How many different detections did we detect? Who was the user? What was the machine IP address? So on and so forth. And of course, breakdowns of the specific types of sensitive information. We even give you the audit API envelope. So if you want that and you need that for your workflow, it's all available in this one place so that you can now investigate those incidents, take a corrective action, create a ticket if it's needed, and really ensure that sensitive data is being used appropriately across your organization. So that's our new DLP alerts investments. Just a quick snapshot. Handing it back to you, Eric, to go ahead and talk about our unified DLP.
Thank you, Maz. These are really important capabilities, and I know customers have been looking forward to getting these deployed in their environments. So I'm sure we'll see that deployed very, very soon. So let's take a quick recap of Microsoft's ever-growing unified DLP solutions. So we at Microsoft, we understand that protecting data is very challenging. We hear from our customers every day that their number one concern is protecting and governing sensitive information. And also that during these challenging times, they fear the possibility of accidental or unapproved data sharing. They also tell us that they don't have 100% confidence in the way that they've deployed some of their solutions internally to detect and prevent data loss. So as we saw at the beginning of this presentation, Microsoft has designed and built a comprehensive unified data loss prevention solution that continues to enrich and protect sensitive data. So let's take a closer look at each of these critical points. So first off, because DLP is cloud-based and fully managed and delivered from the cloud, customers have a seamless onboarding experience. DLP does not require customers to deploy any additional management or support infrastructure. This also means that there's no need for any new hardware or software on-premise or in the cloud. Everything that is required is already available from within Microsoft 365. One of the biggest challenges in creating a DLP policy is understanding the sensitive data that is actually within the organization and also where it is. So Microsoft offers a quick path with out-of-the-box analysis that includes data discovery and data classification. This can be used to speed up a DLP deployment process by providing guidance on the DLP policies that should be deployed first and would provide the strongest deployment value to help improve the organization's security and compliance posture. Microsoft's DLP solution is also built from a common framework of DLP policies that are consistently applied across all environments. This ensures that policies act and react in the same way no matter where they are deployed. By managing all of the locations Microsoft DLP is deployed to from one place, the Compliance Manager, organizations have a clear visibility into which policies are deployed where, and they can feel comforted that there are no gaps in visibility or enforceability. Also, DLP policies offer a very rich and flexible set of configuration options to support even the most advanced and complex of use cases. Because DLP leverages Microsoft information protection, you can use the 40+ built-in policy templates and over 100 classifiers to create and define DLP policies quickly. Example templates include classifiers like financial data, PII, healthcare information, GDPR, and others, many others. An important point to note is that when an admin uses data classification and applies labels to data, all the DLP solutions for Microsoft can automatically use these without any customization. Also, alert management is a critical foundation, as we talked about earlier. Microsoft's approach is to streamline this effort by firstly identifying the right incidents that need to be prioritized, and then to provide an effective and efficient path to investigate and remediate them by showing you all of the event details that you need to quickly determine the root cause of a DLP incident and the best course of action to remediate. For example, pivoting from data sensitivity, you can view and help streamline DLP event investigation by highlighting the risks that are imposed on the most important of data. Lastly, we know information workers have a significant demand on their times, and adding extra steps means that you're taking them out of a workflow experience, and that can create significant productivity blockers. To that end, Microsoft's DLP approach is to provide a fully built-in experience in the native applications that the information workers use every day. So integrated policy tips provide guidance that they need to make the right decisions at the right time when they are working with sensitive information. So taking a step back, one of the biggest values Microsoft provides is the integration between solutions across Microsoft security and compliance. So here we see DLP, which was the focus of our presentation today. This is where customers can define policies that prevent accidental or unapproved sharing of sensitive data and gain actionable insight into these risky activities. But DLP is not an isolated solution that only lives within its own little world. There is actually a two-way integration between DLP and Microsoft Information Protection. Microsoft Information Protection provides the framework to discover, classify, protect, and monitor your data. Organizations have the unique advantage of being able to create DLP policies that can feed into Microsoft Information Protection to create, to discover, to classify, and protect and monitor data. They can also take Microsoft Information Protection sensitive information types as the foundation to a DLP policy. So what you do within DLP can apply to MIP, and also what you do in MIP can automatically apply to DLP. It's a full cycle of support between these offerings. But there is more. Defender provides capabilities to protect from malicious software. The insights provided by Defender can provide significant enrichment of a DLP event. For example, if a DLP alert identifies sensitive data exfiltration, say from an endpoint device, the DLP administrator can quickly pivot to Defender and investigate if the endpoint is in a known good state or if it has recently been compromised. In this example, DLP would be the early warning signal that could identify a targeted data exfiltration campaign with malicious software right in the early stages of an attack. This insight could lead to a broader investigation to determine if other endpoints have also been compromised. The same would apply with insider risk management. So insider risk management identifies user behaviors that could lead to malicious actions. The insight provided by insider risk management can provide significant enrichment to a DLP event. So for example, if a DLP alert identifies sensitive data exfiltration, the DLP administrator can quickly pivot to IRM to investigate and see if the user is exhibiting any characteristics that stand out of the ordinary. In this example, DLP could be the early warning signal that, when correlated with insider risk management, could identify a behavior that is malicious and requires maybe a broader investigation with additional resources from HR, legal, or even other folks. This powerful and unified system of solution provides a comprehensive approach to security and compliance that uniquely puts organizations in full control, as we see here. So if you would like to learn more, I include a number of links that you will find useful. Here you will find the details of everything we covered today, along with additional resources and documentation. So on behalf of Moz, myself, and the entire DLP team, I would like to thank you for taking the time you spent with us to learn more about Microsoft's DLP solution. And we're looking forward to seeing you all in another presentation or podcast very soon.